Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So today we're going to be once again talking about Dragon Age the Veilguard, which released about a week ago, and now that it's had the full weekend to spread its wings and achieve its full potential, we now know that full potential is around 89,000 concurrent players. This game failed to reach over 100,000 in-game players at any given moment, which is a big disappointment. Don't let games journalists or anyone else convince you otherwise. This is a very successful and long-running franchise with a huge baked-in audience and a massive budget for this game. This is not the number they were expecting. This is a disappointing number, especially when you compare it to other AAA titles from this year like Black Myth Wukong that got nearly 2.5 million concurrent players for its all-time peak, and compare that to the 89,000 with Veilguard. And looking at the current numbers right now, the game is sitting at about 55,000 in-game players, which is obviously disappointing. It's not even been a full week from the release, and it's already starting to taper off. And that is not good news for Veilguard. And on top of that, we're getting some reports from Endymion here saying a source he knows who works in the retail space with a major store with over 900 locations in America is claiming there is a mass level of cancellations of physical copies, saying this: so around 14 to 15% of each version of Veilguard was canceled in the last few days by customers across these 900 stores within America alone. And apparently the digital copies are also not good as well. Below 500,000 pre-orders for that, just the digital copy, but the physical copies is close to 200,000, and also it has this high rate of cancellations. This is not a good sign for Veilguard, and to further prove that things are not going very well, Bioware appears to be just giving up on Veilguard. So in an interview with IGN as well as Rolling Stone, they have confirmed that they're essentially moving on from Dragon Age the Veilguard, and they're basically rerouting their resources in the company to the next Mass Effect game. That is now their new focus. They're already abandoning Veilguard 1 week in, and they're saying that basically there's going to be no DLCs, there's going to be no more major updates for this game. They're simply going to provide quality of life improvements and basically bug fixes. They are quite literally abandoning this game 1 week in, and yet people are trying to tell you this was some big commercial success when clearly it was a big disappointment. This is a game with predictably hundreds of millions of dollars in its budget, with a baked-in franchise, and it's just falling flat on its face within the first week. It's just not good. And we're seeing a lot of games journalists coping and trying to find ways to spin the numbers to make it look like Veilguard was a big success. And you can see, of course, Kotaku here saying Dragon Age the Veilguard surprises everyone as EA's biggest single-player launch on Steam. Now, if you're at all knowledgeable with EA and how they do things, especially with single-player games, they typically wait years to release the counterpart on Steam. An example of that being Dragon Age Inquisition. They released that 6 years after the initial release. It came to Steam 6 years later. Of course, it's not going to perform as well as the initial launch, and a lot of journalists have been comparing the rates at which people had participation on Steam with Inquisition versus Veilguard, like, wow, what an increase. But they're, of course, ignoring the fact that it came out 6 years later. And as Smash JT points out here, in the article itself, Kotaku is coping very hard. They cite a vocal minority who continues to downplay the significance of the numbers while claiming that Monster Hunter Wilds beta test outperforms the full Dragon Age release. Well, it did. That is just a fact. The beta for Monster Hunter Wilds had around 400,000 in-game players. Yes, it is a beta. It's not free to play, but that number completely crushed Veilguard when it really shouldn't have. There should have been way more enthusiasm for Veilguard, but it just wasn't there. But again, we have to deal with these journalists and their allies trying to do everything to tell you you're wrong for criticizing Veilguard, while they don't really stand behind anything they're saying. You can see Khalif Adams here, who is someone we've talked about before, a big defender of games journalists, begging people in his fields for a code for this game. Basically saying, I don't want to pay for this game, so give me a code. They don't really stand by anything they're doing. If you actually cared about this game and Bioware, you would go out and buy a copy unless you can't afford it. And in that case, I would recommend spending less time on Twitter. But there's reasons why this game failed, and one of them is because this game is woke. In fact, it is one of the wokest games we've seen in quite some time, and it's really off-putting to a lot of people, and that is reflected in this recent bombshell reported yesterday, where this user found what appears to be some notes that the team accidentally left into the PC version of this game. People are trying to guess as to what happened here, and some people are saying these are notes based on what they kind of are claiming what these characters would think or view themselves or other characters, saying notes like that these characters are trans, and trans means was other gender, then changed, wait, no, was always new thing, just now acknowledged, not changing, affirming, trans woman is woman. And over here talking about characters being non-binary and trying to correct and inform people on what being gender fluid is, and so on and so forth. And with the very shoddy grammatical errors and all this stuff, and just the ridiculous nature of what we're reading here for basically something to be included in a AAA release, myself and a lot of people just said, this is fake. Like, someone's doing a psyop here. They're trying to set you up. This has happened in the past where people who support woke games, they try to put out fake evidence and fake claims, and just they hope that people will believe it, and they say, aha, gotcha, chud, you didn't do your research, which is very strange because the fact that people will believe just about anything at this point shows how bad the current state of the gaming industry is. But anyways, there is proof out there definitively that this is actually in the game. So this is a screen recording of what's going on, and as you can see, this whole set of notes will pop up right on the side here, and you can see it reflects the actual notes that we were just looking at in the previous tweet. And some people have come forward, like Mark Kern, who is a veteran of the industry, and said their kind of thought process about what this might be. And as he says, it appears to be writer's notes that were just kind of accidentally slipped into the game, more like a diary that is explaining kind of how they view their characters and what their mindset might be in regards to certain things like their identity. But it accidentally slipped into the game, which is hard to believe. Like, how does something like that slip into a AAA release as big as Veilguard? It almost seems intentional, and as he points out here, one of the writers on the team is transgender, so it might make sense that these sorts of things slip through, but we don't have any confirmation that that was the particular writer responsible for those notes. But there's another reason why Veilguard is failing so hard, and it's because of the writing and also the voice acting as well. Okay, some of the writing in this game is just beyond atrocious. The writing is so juvenile and pandering, it's actually insulting to people. Like, I cannot believe some of the things they're trying to include in this game. And to prove that, let's watch another clip. Pretty much every time I cover Veilguard, I show another clip that I think, surely it can't get worse than this. Well, here is the latest clip. Let's check it out.
Sounds like your mother was hard on you. Nah, I think your fingers are just perfect.
Yeah. So... are you trying to have sex with me?
Hadn't really thought that far ahead, but maybe?
Quick, think about us having sex.
Is this what woke people find funny or sexy or both? I don't really know. You can't tell me this is good writing. You can't tell me this is good voice acting. It's a joke. It sounds really, really bad. And honestly, the main focus being the writing, that is what is different between Veilguard and other games that have woke aspects but succeed. I mean, a lot of people have been bringing up Baldur's Gate 3. Okay, Baldur's Gate 3, especially in the character creation process, has things that people will label as woke. However, that's where it ends. The character creation process, the game itself, and the writing, most importantly, is really, really good. That's why people enjoy the game and they can get over that other stuff. And right now, Baldur's Gate 3 has a higher concurrent player count than Veilguard that just released only a few days ago. Now, what's interesting is Thomas Mahler would give his opinion on the writing of Veilguard, and if you forgot who Thomas Mahler is, we talked about him a couple of weeks ago. Basically, there was a woke influencer on Twitter trying to falsely claim that she worked for for one of the games he was the director of. And he would go on Twitter and clarify that she does not work or never worked for him or his companies, and that her behavior online is something they don't want associated with any of their products or their companies. And of course, in response to that, Kotaku's Alyssa Mercante would call him a dickhead for correcting the record, but that's another story. But anyways, he would add some thoughts to this, talking about how growing up in the 80s, even as a young boy, he always thought that TV shows were low-effort trash. Then over time, there was some more pushing of boundaries and quality improvements, where in the late 90s, television started to improve with its quality and its writing. But looking at games now, he says, it's clear to see that we're apparently moving back to the Stone Age of political correctness. I just watched a Dragon Age playthrough, and it's quite unfathomable how infantile and terrible the writing is. Everything feels sanitized and dehumanized. I don't know why we're suddenly thinking that this is okay. Your job as a writer is to write about things that are heartfelt, interesting, and true, to draw people into that world that you created. And if this is the best that you can come up with, you shouldn't be a writer in the first place. And he has some more thoughts, but you kind of get the gist at this point. He is absolutely dunking on these writers for Veilguard because he should. He is someone who is very successful in the industry and knows what good writing looks like. And he's looking at the pandering and infantile writing of Veilguard and saying that is not acceptable for a AAA release. So yeah, I will not buy what these journalists are trying to say about Veilguard. This game is a massive flop, and it deserves it because it's low quality, it's woke beyond belief, and combining those things together, it's not surprising this game is a massive disappointment. And yeah, that's really where Veilguard is at the moment. I appreciate you guys listening to the video, and as always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.